Buakaw is a Muay Thai legend, known for his insane power, speed, aggression, and relentless pressure. But the thing that stuck out to me immediately after viewing multiple fights was Buakaw's insane ring IQ. In other words, his ability to adapt his strategy, his style, and his techniques in order to dominate an opponent. Studying how Buakaw does this should help serve as a template for practitioners of any style or discipline. Let's begin by looking at how Buakaw blends techniques from boxing into his base style of Muay Thai. Many fighters who try to incorporate an additional discipline into their original martial art end up awkwardly switching from one to the other, almost like tagging in another character in a video game. Buakaw takes the opposite approach, maintaining his stance and guard and slipping in a few Western techniques here or there, only when it makes complete sense to do so. In other words, maybe 1 or 2 movements at the most out of a 5-movement combination will stray from traditional Muay Thai techniques. The most obvious deviation Buakaw uses is to weave from side to side in order to avoid punches and increase the power of his own. He'll also incorporate slips and pull counters with a far more Western flavor. Buakaw uses this sparingly, when he is either too close to worry about kicks or knees, or when his opponent is too committed to his own punch to immediately threaten them. As mentioned before, Buakaw's most impressive use of boxing is when he blends it seamlessly with Muay Thai, and here is a brilliant example. Buakaw catches his opponent's teeth, but rather than try to trip him or throw the leg down to set up a superior angle of attack, Buakaw takes a completely unorthodox approach. Noticing that his opponent is trying to punch his way out of the position, Buakaw simply drops his leg, slips the punch, and crosses over a beautiful lead hook with pinpoint precision. Another lesson we can take away from Buakaw is how he consistently targets his opponent's weaknesses, fixating on them with laser-like focus. Because what wins a fight is often not the strike that scores the KO, but the repetitive, consistent strikes used to wear down the opponent over time. Let's look at a simple example before moving on to something more complex. In this fight, Buakaw chose to target his opponent's ribs almost exclusively, perhaps reacting to his competitor's high guard. Since both fighters are in an orthodox stance with their same side forward, Buakaw's lead leg needs to be the one to connect. Lead leg round kicks are weaker, but Buakaw used a fairly standard loading technique and switch kick to add power. Buakaw's shin battered his opponent's arm every time he did manage to block, leaving it red and swollen by the first round. And of course, Buakaw's competitor was now overreactive, creating predictable openings elsewhere every time he went to block his painful midsection. Buakaw's opponent attempted to stave off the damage by switching stances, but this only made it easier for Buakaw. Now he required no preparatory movement at all, and continued to destroy his competitor's midsection by kicking with his strong side. His competitor once again switched stances during the last minute of the fight, most likely hoping to use his power side to do some last-second damage. But immediately, Buakaw went back to attacking with his lean side, and whatever Hail Mary hope his opponent had evaporated as he quickly retreated from every new attack. It's a minor, but telling example of Buakaw's ability to stick to the game plan, even when presented with a changeup. In this fight, Buakaw's opponent used a common Muay Thai tactic, keeping a light, active lead leg. An active lead leg allows a fighter to more easily check kicks and set up kicks of his own. Buakaw's opponent also switched stances constantly, a great strategy for setting up new angles of attack and loading power into your kicks by changing which side is the power side. But Buakaw shut him down in the first minute of the fight, targeting his heavier rear leg regardless of which stance he was in. This was especially devastating when he shifted backwards, as all of his weight was on his new lead leg when Buakaw connected. A major downside for fighters who rely on active lead legs and knee blocks is that they are often left immobile, vulnerable to follow-ups from feints attacking their lead leg. Once Buakaw had his opponent figured out, it was easy to drive him to the ropes and target anything but the lead leg. His competitor was left trapped in place on one foot, unable to offer much resistance for the remainder of the fight. In this fight, Buakaw noticed the opposite, that his opponent was lead leg heavy. A heavy lead leg allows a fighter to put more power into their punches and creates the base and stability for more head movement, but it also staples the opponent's foot to the ground. Just like a knee block, it leaves a fighter temporarily immobile, in the exact opposite way. The major difference between the two is that a heavy lead leg foot leaves a fighter highly vulnerable to lead leg kicks. In case you haven't noticed by now, Buakaw isn't one to let a weakness go to waste. As a quick side note, Buakaw himself tends to keep a light lead leg, but he uses head movement while drop stepping out of his knee blocks in order to remain elusive and take away some of the risks of immobility. We've looked at how Buakaw flawlessly identifies his opponent's weaknesses, but for the last fight, let's look at how Buakaw closed the holes in his own defense after nearly being KO'd in the first round. If Buakaw could be said to have a flaw, it's his over-reliance on the same defensive maneuver over and over again, mainly a lead hand frame combined with the rear hand high guard. This can make any fighter more vulnerable to feints. In this case, Buakaw's opponent feinted across in order to get Buakaw to extend his guard, and then connected with the staggering lead hook, sending Buakaw to the canvas. He was able to land this same combination multiple times throughout the fight, and Buakaw was barely able to hold on. Buakaw also got caught multiple times by tight overhands angled around his extended guard. These overhands were predicated off of multiple jabs. But in the second, Buakaw immediately neutralized his opponent's best weapons. The first adjustment he made was to shell up when his opponent threw his cross-feint hook combination, rather than using his leverage guard. This is a simple adjustment, yes, but what matters is that Buakaw was able to identify how he was getting tricked by his opponent and then take that advantage away from him. The next step was to deal with his opponent's jab, the strike that was setting up most of his offense during the first round. In the first, Buakaw had tried to counter with body kicks, but was getting his foot caught. He had next tried to return jab with his opponent from punching range, but all that had done is create more openings. In the second, Buakaw used his competitor's jabs against him. Rather than circle and jab as he had in the first, he slipped to move in closer, leaving his lead hand extended to stop his opponent's power hand and smother his offense. From there, he landed multiple body shots and leg kicks. He had effectively placed his competitor into a range that he was not comfortable in, and which Buakaw himself excelled. Unable to adjust to Buakaw as he had to him, his opponent seemed totally helpless for the remainder of the fight. So far, we've looked at Buakaw's ability to blend new techniques into a traditional base style, his prevalence for identifying and targeting his opponent's vulnerabilities, and how he can alter his own defense mid-fight to come back and claim victory. Now let's take a look at one last element of Buakaw's game, his creativity. Buakaw is able to string together a wide array of vastly different, complex techniques, each supplementing and setting up the next. Here, he pins his opponent's guard to stifle his offense, ducks under his punch, frames off of his opposite shoulder, and lands a beautiful spinning elbow. This is absolute insanity, and one incredible display of timing, originality, and skill. Buakaw is clearly a one-of-a-kind fighter, someone whose strategies should be studied by martial artists of all styles and disciplines. Thanks for watching. You can pre-order my upcoming book on defense and counters by clicking the link in the comments below, or check out my best-selling books on footwork and power generation. From the Modern Martial Artist, this has been David Christian, wishing you happy training.